Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Who I Hire podcast. As always, but today, super excited. We have a phenomenal guest with us today. Today's guest is, I can say with full confidence, is one of Europe's most best-known marketing experts. I'm sure she's going to be a little bit more humble when she gets to say that. Exactly. But no, Emilia Korczynska joins us today. Emilia is VP of Marketing at Userpilot for the last 6.5 years. But also, Emilia has become an expert not only in user experience through working with Userpilot, but also you're a European worldwide expert in account-based marketing, which is, a very, very exciting field for marketers and people in general. And what also I think is really interesting, Emilia, you're also one of my first guest that has experience in also hiring and being located in different parts of Europe as well.
Yeah.
So I'm super interested to see how that experience, we can tap into that today. And, just for our listeners today, growing international SaaS products and teams for me is always been a super challenging role. And today I'm going to really talk with Emilia and learn just how it is to not only do that as a hiring manager, but how do you add skills and talents to your teams and organizations as things change. So if you're a candidate and you're looking to join a fast-paced growing company that is tech-orientated or startup-orientated, you are in the right place. Emilia, what did I miss? I know you've got a wealth of experience and knowledge, but yeah, welcome to the podcast and let me know if I missed anything.
I don't think you missed anything. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Nick. I feel, like you put the bar very high in terms of the listeners' expectations. So, no pressure.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you're one of those rare cases where I know from experience that, and I think you hopefully you've experienced this as well, where people will want to work for the companies that you've been leading, like Userpilot. But I have very little doubt that people also look to work for you. It's that rare case when someone actually is looking for a particular mentor or guide as well as they look for. So I think that's why I'm so excited. And we got to meet in person a few weeks ago in Warsaw at an event. So the stars aligned, and I'm so happy that you are here. And Emilia, the first question I ask every guest so that our listeners know, can you tell me a little bit about the kind of roles that you've been hiring for lately, or you feel that, are most common? Because your role is obviously very wide in the company that you're in.
Sure. So I do hire for a large variety of roles in marketing. So this ranges from content marketing through marketing operations, performance marketing. So whatever, the marketing department needs at any given point. I sometimes get looped into like key executive hires for the sales department. Yeah, I would say this is it. So, as a marketer, I hire for the marketing team.
Sure. And this is a question that I like to ask as well, which is, you've got a lot of experience on the market, and I think I like these kind of conversations because I think I relate to you as well, where sometimes we are very much feeling like the founders, the board members, the C-levels of our companies, but we are still also employees, and we've been candidates in the past as well. Would you prefer, or do you think it's better to be a candidate today or 5 years ago? How do you look at the market, the recruitment market right now? Do you think it got more difficult, or there are some things that got better? What are your feelings about it?
It got more difficult, honestly. Everything is getting constantly more difficult. First of all, because recruiters use AI to sift through like large volumes of CVs, and the candidates themselves respond with kind of using the machine gun approach to applying for jobs. So it's kind of a catch-22 where the job seekers blame the recruiters and the HR for not, spending enough time on their CVs and not like paying attention and using AI tools to just discard candidates, and it all feels extremely transactional, and like basically it's a biased and unfair process from the get-go. On the flip side, as a recruiter myself, or someone that sometimes wears the recruiter's shoes, um, I kind of realized that the candidates themselves are exacerbating the situation by just applying to any job that wouldn't even be remotely relevant for their qualifications sometimes. So it's literally when you open a new position and you get 300 applications on day one, and literally more than half of them, like, they haven't even read the job description, and it's very, very evident. So people confusing product manager with project manager, for instance. Yeah, there is just no other way to deal with this deluge of candidates, right?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. I mean, yeah, it's been a common thread, and definitely I talk a lot. That is right now, both sides are maybe adapting to the situation by trying to handle volume, and and possibly both sides are making it worse potentially. And I think about this as like it's a standoff of who's going to blink first. It's very hard for
Yeah.
me to say to a candidate, hey, listen, like, you've applied for 80 jobs. It's probably not going to help the system, but I understand it's if they just think that volume is going to be the key. And I tend to make and I think this will be interesting with your point of view today, because I sometimes tend to make correlations to marketing. I mean, the way that relationships are built in recruitment is sometimes what we are trying to build with our leads and more leads. But this recruitment situation we have now is different because, yes, as marketers, we use AI and tools to generate more relationships, but it would be different if our leads were using AI to test 100 tools. They're still not doing that, but in recruitment we have the volume coming from both ways. So yeah, I think it is more challenging, and I think how do you see it from a hiring manager? You feel like also was it easier to hire 5 years ago, or to identify talent 5 years ago? How do you see it from like the hiring manager point of view?
Yeah, I mean, easy and harder to an extent. Like, I think everything has gotten harder because the expectations of speed and velocity are huge today. Like, everyone thinks that since we have AI tools at our disposal, this should facilitate like all the processes, including the hiring process, which it does not always do. Also because the candidates have realized that, yeah, there is this market-wide problem of people applying to jobs they aren't qualified for, just mass applying, hoping that something will come out of it. So there's just so much noise that it's very difficult to find the right candidates. And to give you an example of what we've done recently, we subjected all candidates to like a general cognitive aptitude test first.
Yeah.
To, like, the company had their requirements in terms of like which percentile do they want to work with. But it turned out in the initial interview, and that was quite, surprising, but a revelation for me, that this doesn't correlate with the quality of the candidate almost at all. I was talking
Okay.
to some people that scored extremely high on this like intelligence test, but they really didn't have a clue why they applied for this job, or couldn't, like, explain why they would be a good fit, or just weren't lucid at all. So we knew very quickly that this conversation isn't going anywhere. So what I'm thinking in terms of whether it's more difficult or easier these days is that probably in the pool of candidates that we discarded because they didn't perform so well on this cognitive test, there might have been like real gems that we didn't even get to talk to. So this is actually after this round of hiring, I posted on LinkedIn that, like, please guys, if we can stop this madness of applying to every open position,
Yep.
regardless of what it
Yep.
is, it will make your life actually easier because the recruiters will have more bandwidth. But nobody wants to be the first one that steps out and says, like, I'm not going to apply to 80 jobs, like you said. I'm going to apply to 4 jobs, but I will be extremely deliberate about it. I will maybe make some proactive applications, etc., etc.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what I hope that's what we can achieve with the podcast episodes that we have, which is to try to convince people. And luckily, I think again, from being a marketer, I think we like to be data driven, and the studies are starting to come out that basically there is a threshold. Now, don't be wrong, I'm surprised at the number, because I think the number is that after a candidate has been in 60 application processes, their chances of being hired actually decrease. So this is good. The data, I mean, and logically this makes sense, because everything that we've said and what you've even said in the first few minutes here is that we will move people forward who show us that they have an intent. They applied here for a reason. They are skilled here for a reason. They actually read what we wrote in the job description. So it does make me understand, because if you are applying for hundreds of jobs, there's no way you are giving them the right amount of attention and detail and insight that you need, I think. But you touched on something there, Emilia, which I like to show candidates when we are talking to our guests, which is based on today or your most recent recruitments, or maybe the most ideal recruitment. What's your most trusted recruitment process looking like? Do you like to like you said, now you have cognitive tests, potentially you have some kind of testing period. Do you like to have number of interviews? Do you like to have tasks? How today, if you are opening a marketing role tomorrow, what kind of steps do you normally have in your recruitment?
Yeah, so I do like to start with a test. I did think that this cognitive aptitude test is a good idea, and maybe it is a good idea. So, it's hard to say how many bad conversations I would have had with the candidates that I didn't talk to. So maybe it's like it actually decreases the number of these bad applications, but I can't tell for sure. But what I do like to do is first prepare like a very short, I wouldn't say an assignment, but a test that can be done fairly quickly. But that is role specific. So I can see how a certain person thinks about, whatever they would be dealing with in their job, and then have this test result to discuss at the interview as well. So in the past, we used to hire like large volumes of content managers, content editors, because we were, very reliant on organic inbound traffic, and SEO was our main, basically channel to drive this organic traffic. So we had this like content editor aptitude test that was purely self-serve. So people could literally go on a page and do the test, like submit it, and then we would just get a notification that someone has submitted the test, and we could do like this continuous hiring where we had a database of people with good test results. The test was very easy for us to evaluate, right?
Mm-hmm.
We did that in the past for other roles, for instance, for graphic design, even where we had like a couple of people from the team evaluate the results of the same test. Like the evaluation criteria were very standardized. So they would literally score the answers on the assessment, and we would then compare notes and see if the scores were consistent. And most of the time they were actually very consistent. So it was very easy for us by looking at the scores that we gave each candidate in each of the categories we wanted to evaluate, to basically see how the candidate performed. So for me, this is like the first step, even before I have an interview. And it really, really helps reduce the number of interviews, the time waste for everyone involved. And then it's typically one interview if it's like a more junior position to discuss the test and also discuss like the candidate's general motivation to join. And then if it's a more senior position that requires maybe doing a proper paid assessment, and I want to say like any assessment, I believe, that involves, several hours of the candidate's time should be paid. And we do pay fairly if we ask them to, like work 5+ hours on something. Then, we have another meeting, another interview to discuss the assignment. And then it's basically the final step is the commercial call. So this is kind of the process that I like to follow, ideally.
Do you how like you? I think you mentioned this, especially about the assignment side. Like how how many other people from the organization are usually involved? Like, so do you? Do you, like you said, you might have peers who will help with the understanding of the assessment. Do you bring people in at any stage of the interview, or how is it normally for you?
Yeah, I always loop in the direct managers of this person,
Hmm.
and often also the ICs are in the same position. So if I'm hiring for, say, a content editor, I would involve another content editor that has been doing the job well
Yeah.
for a while,
Yep.
to kind of provide feedback, because people that are on the floor um, always have the best perspective if that hire would be a good fit in terms of both their skills and culture. So we want to make sure that they still enjoy working in their job, and that it's not, this trust and this relationship is not tarnished by, like someone higher up hiring a person that they would like really not enjoy working with, or that they don't approve of because they don't think they have the skills or personality or whatever it takes to do the job well.
Yep. No, I mean, I think this is again. That's where recruitment processes are still very unique and very individual, because I think that what you've said is really important. When you look at that mixture of skill and talent versus culture fit, like, would you say that like you favor one over the other, or your history of good hiring, so people who worked really well, did they get both things right in the very, very beginning? Do you want them both to be perfect? Like, how do you look at that mixture between skill and talent and good culture fit for your teams?
Every time that we hired for skill and talent and disregarded a bad culture fit, it didn't work out. And
Okay.
it didn't work
Sure.
out really quickly, and often it like backfired, and often they were, like fireworks when this person was leaving. So honestly, I used to be very much like left brain recruiter who only, looked at the skills, the like aptitude, performance on the tests, and I thought this is fair, right? And this is the way to go. But with experience, I learned the
Sure.
hard way
Yeah.
that actually the culture fit matters just as much, if not more. So on the flip side, like people who were hired only for the culture fit but didn't have the right skills and the qualifications, sometimes they grew into the roles, right? So it also depends on like the
Hmm.
general like aptitude and the drive of the candidate. We had some amazing candidates or amazing, teammates that joined as interns that like didn't have any prior work experience, but they were so hardworking and they were so, you know, driven and yeah, just diligent and hardworking that it just worked out really nicely. But it never worked out if someone wasn't the right fit. Um, it's interesting. Yeah, what is that culture fit really, and how do you evaluate it in a way that feels fair and not impressionistic?
Yeah, I mean, this again, like it's so interesting what you said, because I do think that culture is, if you get it wrong, no amount of skill and talent will overcome it in almost all roles that I can think of, especially in marketing. Maybe in IT, a little bit more introvert, a bit more individual work, it could be okay, but still. But the when I look at the recruitment processes and the tools we have in front of us today, to in a lot of recruitment time, we have more and more skills, more and more tools to help us verify skills and talents. We still don't have a lot of help or a lot of assistance of, because like you said, that first stage of recruitment, we are looking for a filter. We need to get that 300 down to people who are qualified, who are able to do the job. But I would also, if I could, I would love to. The first thing I would love to check with people is their culture fit, but we can. It's so much harder to do, and this is where the interview stage and so on comes in. So I fully agree with you. I fully agree with you. I think my experience as well has been that when you've had that hyper talented person, and I've made the huge mistake in the past of somebody being so good on paper that I've gone, you know what? skip the recruitment process. We're just going to have a call and, like it's a done deal. And those people didn't work out. So I fully agree with you that I think culture fit needs a standard. The hard part about culture fit is, for me, that we have 1 or 2 hours in a recruitment process to check it. And some people are having good days and bad days and so on. And it kind of leads me to a question I have for you, which is, when you look at the past, Emilia, in the recruitments you've done, do you remember specific things that candidates have done to impress you? Like, what are those cases in the past where someone did something, because that really stood out for you?
Yeah, no, I've had like a lot of candidates that impressed me with like, yeah, things that stood out and going the extra mile. So, one very basic thing that will sound like maybe a bit surprising and a bit daft, but answering my questions directly and really listening to what the recruiter is saying, and then
Yeah.
like taking, even 3-5 seconds to think like how to answer the question. Because a lot of candidates say so much that it's literally difficult for us. And I always ask the other, recruiter on the call after each candidate, like, how did you feel? Did you like have the same impression? And we kind of cross-reference. Was it me, for instance, having a bad day that I wasn't able to focus? Or was the
Sure.
candidate really waffling? But it happens a lot of
Yeah.
time, and it's so difficult to find people that are really lucid and have like this direct train of thoughts. And I really, really appreciate that if someone's able to just straightforwardly, to the point, answer the question. So this is something that like already impresses me because it stands out. Um, Other things, like being proactive and doing things that the candidate hasn't been asked for. So, like, we've had candidates that would send, like a video CV or an introduction of themselves. Like one of our, I would say, best hires who joined us as an intern, an SDR intern, and then went on to become a marketing operations manager and a GTM engineer. So a
Hmm.
completely different career path. At the beginning, he didn't, because he was fresh out of uni or he was still a student, so he didn't know what he wanted. And it took us actually a couple of years to define what his like zone of talent is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we knew he had talent, and we knew he was the kind of person that goes extra mile, that is very capable. Um, so, like doing something that you weren't asked for
Yeah.
always makes a huge difference. And one of these things that you weren't asked for could be like doing proper research into the company you're applying to. Like, for instance, we have a free trial on our website. And if someone's applying for certain roles in content, in marketing especially, like how can you market a product, or how can you be sure that you want to market a certain product without ever seeing it? So it always surprises me that people don't sign up for a free trial before going into these calls, don't like want to experience or learn about the product. There are plenty of people that have really no clue what the product does when
Hmm.
they have applied, or what the company does, like what the company is, where is it located, and like, just doing better research than other candidates already will make you stand out. And then what comes hand in hand is actually understanding why you're applying for a job, not only in this particular position, but in this particular company. Why do you want to, in my case, because these are marketing vacancies, why do you want to market this product?
Yeah.
Um, and how does this align with your general career plan? So I do like to see that people are proactive and that they are like, self-driven and they know what they want. Because that really translates later on into being a self-starter and working independently. I feel there are like two types of employees: those that wait for instructions and they're, maybe good executors, but the moment you don't have the time to like point out what they are supposed to be doing, they're kind of like deer in the headlights. They don't know what to do next and they don't really take initiative. And then there are people who are like constantly, take charge of their role and they shape their role. And of course, I would prefer to hire the latter. So I'm looking for these signs that someone is very self-aware, that they are able to, like understand exactly why this role fits into their career plan and what they want to achieve. Um, and maybe they come, to the table with some ideas already, like what they would actually bring to the table if we hired them in this role. Why should we hire you and not the next person? And again, surprisingly, a lot of people can't answer that question. It almost feels like these are like the, job interview questions 101.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah, yeah.
I have to. I think this is the message that we've been talking. I mean, from a candidate, if you're listening to this podcast, I mean, the key thing you have to remember is that I believe that what you've just said and what my opinion is as well, which is we really make it easier for us to make decisions. Stand out from the crowd, do that little thing. If I can, I have a similar story because I've just had a role open for an SDR role, which is, it doesn't need a huge amount of experience. And I wanted to have a task, even though off topic, I lost faith in tasks recently with the birth of AI, especially written tasks. It was so hard because every task was written perfectly. And when I met people on the interview, it was clear that they'd had, AI did the task for them. And I said to the SDRs, and I said, record me a 30-second video, a 60-second video of why you think I should buy Netflix as a subscriber. And my objections are that I don't have time and I don't really think I will get the value from it. Now, what a bunch of candidates did is they just started to read to me kind of like the features and benefits of Netflix in a 60-second. Oh, Netflix is this. The candidates that got through, and I think only 3 of them did it. They were like, Mick, I see that you are ahead of growth. I saw that your last 3 posts on LinkedIn were about this. Netflix is going to be Netflix is going to not be your turn off time, but it might inspire you. And there are these 3 movies about recruiting, about employee. And I was like, yes, like
Wow.
finally someone has just, and again, I know I know like this, it kind of comes to that. The people who don't do that, I feel that they're either tired or they are not motivated to actually find the right place for them in their job. Yeah, I think candidates that go those little extra steps, I think they make it a lot. But coming back to what you said, I think this is really a really interesting one for me when I think about marketing roles. Is there a way that someone can do that wrong? So what I mean is, let's say someone comes to you and they go, Emilia, like, I've applied for the content manager role at Userpilot. And I see that you're doing these 50 things wrong. They're terrible. They're awful. Like, can a candidate I have this sometimes with sales pitches as well. Can they critique too much when they're trying to show where they can bring value, in your opinion?
Well, that depends on the recruiter's ego.
Yes.
And unfortunately, like the recruiter's only human, so you may come across people that will take that criticism personally, and especially if that person has, designed certain processes or has, like produced certain content themselves, like they may take this critique personally and basically see it as an attack on the quality of their work and feel threatened. And if a recruiter feels threatened by a new candidate, they may start, like, even subconsciously, it doesn't have to be explicitly, like in their heads, but subconsciously maybe feel like I shouldn't hire this person because they may threaten my authority and my position in this company. So this is something to consider, but maybe it's actually good for candidates to make this mistake so they can also sift out the the companies and the departments where they would be working with very ego driven people that, like, don't really want what's the best for the company and for growth of the organization, but they're like going to be defending their judgment and their opinions at all cost. So I would still advise candidates to be, of course, to be polite and to be professional in giving that feedback, but to provide constructive criticism and to, like, provide an insight of what they could offer to improve the situation and take it from like, I don't know, 60% to 90%.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I agree with that. And I think my advice to candidates would be, it's probably better to be rejected for things that you stand by and believe in than be rejected for being passive because you were trying to be, like likable or whatever it may be. Like I think it's good to show off your ideas and skills, and again, show your value to the company. I think that's really important, and I think that it's a lot. It's a lot of the time for me. It's not big picture. It's not someone coming in and saying, "I know how to revolutionize what you do." It's normally those 1%, 2%. Oh, I saw this email that you send on day 5. I think that I could do this. I mean, it's just about opening those little doors, and I think this is what we look for. And it kind of, actually, Emilia, it kind of brought something else to my mind that I like to ask. Like, when you are recruiting, if you got one application, but it was a great candidate, would you be happy with that? Or do you like to have some comparison? Do you like to have I know sadly we're not in a world right now where we get one candidate anymore, but, like, how do you recruit? Do you like to have 5 people at the last stage or 10 people at the interview? Or are you kind of like, no, just give me one good one and it's okay for me?
I just realized recently that it's better to actually talk to more people because we literally had this situation where we talked to the first candidate that has already been through the general cognitive aptitude test and has done the small screening test for that specific role. And they seemed to be very good. I wouldn't say fall in love kind of good, but very
Yeah,
good.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But so we were instantly yeah, let's make an offer to this person. But then we still had a few interviews lined up for that week, and a few more candidates came that were definitely a much better fit.
Okay.
So you don't want to settle for the first candidate that meets your criteria, because maybe you have someone that will completely wow you, knock your socks off in the pipeline
Yeah.
still. So I do like to talk to a few candidates because there are just so many variables in the hiring process, including these nuances in terms of culture fit that are sometimes very hard to define and quantify, that
Hmm.
it's good to have a bit of a Rolodex of candidates to choose from.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm also on the same learning journey as you. I would like, for the listeners, I would love to contradict Amelia, but I can't really. Everything is online with me. But what I mean, I think we are talking, like, me being in the recruitment industry for a while. I know that 2 or 3, 4 years ago, this time to hire was that KPI that everyone was proud of. We were proud of. Oh, we hired a candidate 8 days after opening the job, etc. But as time goes by, I'm also learning that scenario that sometimes that next candidate was a little bit better or felt different. Like, when you don't have that benchmark, when you don't have that, when you're judging person solely on that first interview or the first in the queue, I'm starting to calm down a little bit on that. And we even internally at Traffic and at Smart Jobs, we changed our mission statement to helping companies hire the best candidate fast. So not any candidate fast, but the best candidate. So I think this is something that's coming through now as well, that to have those 2, 3, 4 candidates at the final stages. But we are in a world now where this is probably happening more than, lack of candidates, let's say. Amelia, kind of the opposite side of what we talked about before, which I know like, are there things that candidates have done in your recruitment processes that have turned you off them? That not so, maybe not so much like kind of zoom out mentalities, but even maybe practical things that they did, that they turned up 2 minutes late, or they were not, they couldn't answer one specific question. What are the things that candidates did for you in the past that kind of counted them out moving forward in your processes?
Yeah, there are many factors that have, again, in a more explicit or more implicit way, turned me off candidates. Definitely these small tokens of unprofessionalism, not being unprofessional. So showing up late, showing up like not turning their camera on, like I'm not hell bent on dressing in a suit and tie for the interview, but like obviously not making any effort to appear as a professional on the interview. Um, so these are kind of like small things that like instantly wave a red flag at you. And then in terms of the answers, what I mentioned before was like the flip side of the things that would wow me. So not having done any research into the product or the company, like literally not knowing what the company does. This is one of my first questions that I dress up a little bit, as in, I typically do like a 2-minute introduction into why we're hiring for this role, who we are, like a little bit of our history, and why this role is important for us right now. And then I say, like, I'm not going to bore you with all the details about, like, what Userpilot does, or what the product does, because I'm sure you've done your research. Can you tell me in 1-2 sentences how you understand what we do? And then a lot of times, again, they feel taken aback, or they look taken aback, like they didn't expect to be asked what the company they're applying for does. Not having any clue like how this next role aligns with their like overall career trajectory. So why do they want to do this job except for collecting a paycheck? Like, what are their aspirations? And again, another cliche question that I maybe don't ask like that directly, like, where do you see yourself in 2 years time or 5 years time? But having an idea like what they want to achieve professionally and how this aligns with what we need in this role. So not being able to answer these questions are like immediate red flags, because they are like more sort of attitude and personality, I would say, hallmarks rather than like qualifications. Someone can be super qualified but still have the wrong attitude.
Yeah. Is that your? I keep changing the way that I ask this question. Is it your most valuable question in an interview, to ask if they know the company, or do you have any other interview questions that you like to ask that are revealing or helping you understand the candidate better? What's a good question for you in an interview that you like to ask candidates?
Yeah, I mean, some questions are like general, like these. So
Yeah.
questions about the company, the product, the role, how all of this fits into their career plan. But then there are like some very, very role specific questions. So, for instance, for
Okay.
content roles, I like to ask, in 2026, we all know that AI has disrupted the industry. How do they see the role evolving, and how do they see themselves evolving with this role? Like, what does content marketing even mean in 2026 and beyond versus what it meant 2-3 years ago? And I really like asking this question because it makes me see how the candidate thinks about the future. Are they following the trends? Are they basically up to scratch with, what is happening around them? And it was quite funny because the candidates literally fell into two camps, like the ones that answered the way I wanted. So they talked about like the evolution of the industry and how we can adapt to it, like what content means nowadays and what channels we can now use to achieve better business outcomes. And the other camp was quite defeatist, and they were like, oh, it's going to take my job in 2 years' time. And I'm like, why should we hire you then if it's going to take your job in 2 years' time?
Yeah. Oh, it's
uh,
overrated. Yeah. We shouldn't use it. Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes candidates can count themselves out, but I appreciate that honesty, maybe. But yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine.
And then
Okay.
some other questions that I really like to ask is the question about what they've built specifically in their previous roles and what was the business outcome. Um, and again, like a lot of candidates really have no clue what impact their work had. And this is another red flag that, hey, like, you didn't ask, even if it wasn't, within your remit to report on the impact on pipeline or revenue or whatnot. But to me, having like the understanding of how their work translates into what is actually driving the business is really critical.
I like it. I like I mean, again, like my favorite question lately on recruitments has been to ask the candidate, if you were CEO of your previous company, how would you do things differently? And like a similar way, it's not about them knowing what to do. They are not CEO, we're not hiring from the CEO, but just seeing if they have that little bit of perspective on the role. Were they able to zoom out for a second and see the impact that the role was having, the company was having? I think this is really key. And then, Emilia, the flip side of that, which is, are there we can put this into two questions. How do you feel about, we always ask at the end of most interview process, do you have any questions for us, as hiring managers, as recruiters?
Yeah.
First of all, does it matter for you if a candidate has questions or not? Is it circumstantial to how the interview went, etc.? And if they do have questions, what are good questions that candidates should or could ask you at the end of an interview process?
I love when the candidates have questions, and especially if they are, from my perspective, good questions. So, good questions for me from the candidate are questions that show interest in the company, and interest in evaluating themselves whether they would be a good fit for the role. So first of all, like, tell me more about your team. Right? Like, whom will I be working with? Whom will I be reporting to? If the recruiter hasn't answered this question, because, I like to, as I said at the beginning, set the stage and kind of explain the role, the position, the company, the team, but we don't always cover like all the gory details. It would be a bit awkward to start the interview from explaining, you will be working with 11 people and here are their exact job titles, right?
Yeah,
it's a bit too early for that. But at the end of the interview, especially if it went well, asking the question, whom will I be working with? Will I be reporting directly to you or someone else? Is a green flag for me. Another one is in terms of my expectations. Like, what were your expectations? What are your expectations of this role? Even, maybe a bit cheekily asking, and I've never been asked this question, not recently at least. I don't think I've ever been asked this question, but how did you feel this interview went? Right? Like,
yes.
Do you think we are, based on what we just discussed, do you think we are a good fit? Will we be progressing? Like, being that straightforward and kind of breaking that, wall between yourself and the recruiter is, for me, a huge sign of like the emotional intelligence and maturity of the candidate. So I would risk asking that question, even if it's unorthodox, and then asking about the KPIs for this role and what I, as a candidate, would be expected to achieve. And then I typically give them a rundown of the 30, 60, 90 days. And I have been asked this question quite a bit recently. So by the good candidates. So it does align, in my perspective, with the overall performance in the interview.
I only agree. Again, I think that question again of like, it is undervalued, and I do think candidates should be asking asking for early intent of, did you think that we missed anything during the interview? How do you feel it felt? Is there anything that it can help you with more that we didn't discuss? I think, like you said, I think you worded it brilliant, which is it's this emotional intelligence. Yeah, I think this is a big green flag for anyone involved. And I think, again, like, from a candidate perspective, I think you have to use it, being selfish even, you've got to use questions to, work in your benefit. Because I think, for me, sorry to say it, but any candidate that doesn't have a question at the end of an interview, it's a red flag.
Yeah,
it's a red flag
100%.
because you can use question to say, so I just want to confirm with you, is my summary correct? That, the job is this, like even just to show that you were listening intently, that you have energy, I think it's super, super important. But I agree with you. I mean, don't mean, I've seen candidates do this slightly, I want to say too aggressively, where they won't be like, okay, Mick, so do you have any reasons why you wouldn't hire me right now? And I was like, okay, I get why you're asking. I mean, especially in sales roles when you're working with these strong characters or like say that kind of thing. But yeah, I still think overall it's so much better than not asking any questions at all. I think so. So that's super interesting. And Amelia, I've as we kind of we've looked at that whole process now. One of the new trends that I'm seeing, and I'm wondering how you see this and how you experience this, which is I'm not talking so much about when candidates get hired, but I'm looking more into when a candidate gets rejected. Yeah. So let's say a candidate applies for your role. Maybe they get to the interview stage and you've decided that they are not the right candidate. You give them the feedback as to why they're not the right candidate. And my question to you is, which is, a new field for us, which is, what's the right thing in your opinion for the candidate to do next? Because I'm looking at this scenario now where the rejection process is very varied. I've got candidates that don't reply at all. I've got candidates that will apply and tell me that they think that I was wrong or they think that the decision was stupid. And then I'll get some candidates that will reply and say, thank you, I appreciate it. And, best of the luck for the future. Like, what's your experience right now in how that rejection is going and what kind of experiences have you had when you've been rejecting candidates and how they responded? And what do you think is the better way, not the right way, but the better way for you? What could a candidate do at the end of a recruitment, even if they get rejected, for you to still think better about them than before?
Yeah, very interesting question. So most of the time, it ends with the rejection email, and most of the candidates don't even respond. Some candidates ask for feedback, and this is a bit tricky because I've been, for instance, advised against giving feedback for legal reasons.
Okay. Yeah.
In some more litigious countries, I would say it might, cause problems that, hey, you said, for instance, that it wasn't a culture fit, but they're like, oh, this is not a fair evaluation of my
Scary,
skills.
yeah.
And yeah. So I think at least our HR department is a bit worried about it because we hire in the US and the US is infamously litigious. So
yes, yeah.
There is that. And then there is just the bandwidth, right? That the recruiters are spread so thinly. So typically they may not have the detailed feedback, although it might be a bit easier with AI now, but they typically didn't have the bandwidth and time to provide detailed feedback for the candidates. So maybe asking not about feedback in general, but what was the reason why you decided not to go with my application any further or not to proceed with me as a candidate for this role. But asking specifically, can you give me one reason? And then, do you think there would be any other roles in your organization that I would be a better fit for? Or what would I need to improve specifically for you to consider me for this or any other roles you may have open? And these are very specific questions that also make it easier for the recruiter to answer. Because if you just ask an open-ended question, can you give me any feedback? And they're like, oh my God, where do we start, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, I'm looking at this and actually I've got one use case ever where the recruiter said that the candidate challenged the decision and they reconsidered it and they ended up hiring that candidate. Now, I think that's the edge case.
Yeah.
I think it's the edge case. And I was like, oh no, when we air this, it's going to have this wave of candidates challenging rejections now. I hope not. But basically what I am seeing a lot of candidates that are burning the bridge because it isn't a very emotional experience. Not many people handle rejection well. But I see candidates now, again, because I personally feel it's not because of the rejection you gave them. It's because for them, it might be rejection number 6 or rejection number 12 in their process, and they are just balling this all together. And okay, you're gonna get my frustration today, which they are welcome to do, but it in no way increases their chance of ever being hired in the future, sadly, for certain cases.
Yeah.
So I'm learning this. And the middle ground there, Amelia, is I like to ask this question. Maybe you've already had this in your experience, or maybe even for the future, can somebody ever get hired by you when you are not actively recruiting? Have you ever had an experience or someone's reached out or
Yes.
you've seen some talent and you've gone, oh, we need to make space? And how did that work? How does that happen?
It worked, and it worked brilliantly. And I do have a very specific example in mind, but I think there were more. But this one's, strikes me because it was it's quite peculiar. It was our user, and that has been our power user for literally like several years, and we have done interviews, case studies with her, and we knew that she was really, really good. But obviously, having the background knowledge of having been a power user of our product for 5 years, especially that it was a product marketing position, was super, super important. So even though we weren't hiring for that role at the time, and we had another person in this role, we were like, yes, let's absolutely talk. And I met with her informally in person, and we talked about like what this role would entail. Would it be a good fit for her, for us? And we decided to make this bet. Hey, even though we don't need another product marketing manager right now, let's bet on her. And that bet has paid off big time. Like, she's one of the best hires I've ever made. And in general, I think if someone is proactive and reaching out to you, being very specific about what they can help with, and especially if you know this person in some capacity or another, it's a lot easier. And these are often the best hires because you don't hire out of desperation. You hire because you really, really feel like you can't pass on that person.
In that case, did that person initiate that idea, or did you see that potential and say, hey, listen, maybe you'd be interested in a role here? Like, how did that actual go? Do you recall how it started, that process?
Yeah. In that case, this person initiated that idea and reached out to me on LinkedIn. But I very often, honestly, if I spot like a candidate, I'm loving their posts, I'm loving what they're doing, I would shamelessly, like, proactively reach out to them, like, hey, would you consider even working for us? I do that a lot, actually. And more often than not, people, don't decide. Maybe they explore, the options.
Sure.
But a lot of times they are already, like, committed to whatever they're doing. Sometimes they're freelancers. Sometimes they, don't want to be in full-time employment. It's still worth a try, I think.
I like dropping the hints, especially because I also have that when if I meet someone or I see that they not only have a really good skill or talent, or I'd like to work with them, but I also see that there's realistic potential that we could work together in the future. I like to drop that kind of thing, like, oh, by the way, you have to let me know when you're next looking, because sometimes I can't physically open a role for that person at the time, but it's good to have that little talent pool of people around. And I'm personally, like, with candidates in general, I am trying to encourage them sometimes to, when even if you're open to work, my advice to candidates is not, or my friends even, maybe not candidates as a whole, I've always been like, but before you go to the crazy job market and you see that there are 500 potential positions you could apply for that are hiring, who would you love to work for? Okay, oh, well, actually, have you asked them? Have you, is there a chance that you could bring value to their organization before you go and apply? Because again, like you said, I think you would, like, sometimes recruitment is out of necessity for both parties. And sometimes that causes us to make big compromises, big sacrifices, because we need the best that we can get now. Or if I'm unemployed, I'll take the job that's available now, even if if you were employed, you wouldn't take that role.
Yeah.
And again, it's a very emotional experience, but like taking it out. But I like to, if people can, it's great for them to come back down and just kind of really settle their mind and think, who would I like to work for? And same for like you said, hiring managers or recruiters. When we go, okay, I'm not hiring, but yes, that person would bring value. I think this is something that I think might even be born more out of the mess we have today of hundreds of applications and hundreds of candidates. So, I mean, the last question I have before we'll go to the summary, because I think we've got so many good takeaways here, which is, in general, especially in your role, I mean, you have a great online personality. You're sharing lots of knowledge. You're super open. Do you like in general when candidates? Is it a plus or a minus or a neutral if a candidate would write you directly? I'm asking this because lately, sometimes, let's say, Userpilot will have a open position on its career page, and it's like, apply through the form and here we go, which we want people to do. Is it a plus or a minus if that candidate also reaches you on LinkedIn and says, hey, I saw that you have an open role, I'm interested in it as well? Do you want to have that individual contact with them as well, or is it better if they don't do that? Because I know people who are on both sides of that fence, and I'm wondering how it is for you.
I'm going to answer the most typical answer that a marketer can give you. So it depends.
Sure. Sure.
It really depends. I've been getting a lot of these messages on LinkedIn and some via email lately. Because the candidates are perfectly aware that everyone's applying to 80 jobs at a time, and that they may not, make it through the AI sift. I mean, it really depends. If the message is valuable, so it tells me something about the candidate that really piques my curiosity, then for sure, I do welcome it, actually, because it makes my life easier. And it actually does showcase that this is a person that is proactive, that is taking, charge of the recruitment process themselves. So they aren't just passively, going through the motions, and that they really care. So for me, it's definitely a green flag, but it has to be intentional. And if I get a message on LinkedIn, I applied for your job, yada yada, right? Can you look at my CV? I'm like, I am looking at 500 CVs right now. This is not helpful. And then, especially if they are entitled that because they sent this message, I should jump the queue and skip right to theirs. And sometimes they're following up, and it makes me really uncomfortable and it's really awkward. And that is a red flag in turn, because it shows to me that they are not reading the room, they don't understand my perspective, and probably they wouldn't be a good culture fit. So it really depends on what you send in that message.
I mean, again, and that's I really it's a good answer. It's a really good answer, because again, I think it's not as simple as yes, follow up or not follow up. It's all depending on what you're doing in that follow up. What are you trying to achieve? And the message I always say to candidates is that whatever we experience in a recruitment process, one of our only potential options is to imagine that's exactly how it will look, copy and paste day after day, week after week, working with you. So if you reach out to Emilia and say, hey, I applied 2 days ago, no one's replied yet, why not? Then you only have the choice to think, well, that's what's going to happen with every task, every conversation inside the organization if I hire that person. And do we really want that kind of passive aggressive approach to, put me first? Where, like you said, on the flip side, if you might be like, hey, listen, I applied, but I just want to let you know, I love Userpilot. I read this case study. It made me want to work there. It's probably going to give them a couple of ticks in the plus column. So Emilia, to what I do is I try to wrap up every episode with this, which is, I'm putting you on the spot, by the way, a little bit, but I'm sure this is going to be great. What I normally ask is if you could recap what we talked about today, or maybe something else came to mind. If someone was going to apply for a job with you tomorrow or the next open role you have, what's the 3 pieces of advice they could get, or 3 tips they could get to having a better chance of being successful in that recruitment? What are 3 things that people can do to have a better chance of being hired by you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to recap what I already said, first of all, sign up for Userpilot's trial, like have a look at the product, really understand why you want to market this product and how this role, fits into your career trajectory. What do you want to achieve in this role? Bring some specific details as to what you would bring to the table. So what you would improve in your role with the process or the outcomes that you would be responsible for. And you can send me these suggestions in a DM on LinkedIn or via email, showing me that you're taking proactive steps and that you know exactly why you would be the best candidate for this role. And then finally, when it comes to the interview, show up as a professional and be lucid, answer the questions directly and to the point, and ideally have some questions for me. So I know that you're being very, very intentional about applying for this specific role and not just using the machine gun approach to applying to any job that pays a paycheck.
I love it. I think they are, even though I imagine that we think that the ultimate things make sense and they are logical, I know that even being empathetic to candidates, we sometimes forget these things. We forget some of those fundamental things. And again, it's such a smart piece of advice that you had, which is interact with the product. And I think that goes for almost any job, unless maybe you are applying for NASA and you can't see the rocket that you're going to be working on. But even, applying for a job and saying, oh, I had a look at the product, or I saw it on the shelf, or I tried the tool. I think this is a huge insight and a huge note of intent from a candidate that they care about the job. I think it's amazing. And also, for people watching, the first thing I want to do is I want to say that I think you need to go and follow Emilia on LinkedIn. 1,000%. Now, one reason for that is because you should all want to work with you, Emilia, in the future when you have open roles. But I also have this second feeling, which is there's a huge amount of content to be taken away from what you're talking about when it comes to things like account-based marketing. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, one day you want to be hired by a company. You can start to build those blocks today. I'm a big fan of a brand like Red Bull, for example. I'm not, or Lego. Lego is maybe a nice, healthier example of that. And if I want to work at Lego one day, then even today I can start to follow the right people there, comment on their posts, build relationship with that organization, with the key members.
Yeah.
So even if you're a candidate and you've got long-term aspirations, there's a lot of things you can learn from marketing techniques. And without question, if that's the case, you should be following Emilia. Emilia, let me say thank you so much. It was super amazing episode. There's a lot of key takeaways in there for everybody that joined the conversation. And it was super insightful for me as well. So thank you so much for your really, really valuable time.
Thank you, and likewise, I feel now I'm better prepared for another round of interviews. So,
that's sometimes what candidates don't know is that we also have to switch our mind sometimes. We are not recruiting every day. Yeah, most of our time is spent in other panels and so on. So, no, it was great. Thank you so much. And for anyone watching, if you like this episode, please click like and subscribe. And like I said again, I highly recommend you go and find Emilia on LinkedIn, give her a follow. And if you have any questions about what we talked about in this episode, I'm sure you can fire them over as well. So thanks everyone so much again. Emilia, thank you so much for your time, and see everybody on the next episode.